Hello, this is the new concept for today, problem 8-138, where you're asked to factor the difference of cubes as well as the sum of cubes. And we are only going to factor the expression down to a linear factor multiplied by a quadratic factor. And we're going to look for a pattern. Now, when I just look at the first column with the difference of cubes, I can, from inspection, just looking at the structure of this problem, I know that the root that would make this 0, if I'm looking to factor it, would be 1, because 1 cubed is 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So if I can look at this with my eye, right, I'm going to look with my eye. Let's do a pretty eye. And through my eye itself, I can tell that x equals 1 is a root. So if x equals 1 is a root, what is the corresponding linear factor? So again, we know that x equals 1 is a root. That would imply that the linear factor that this is divisible by would be x minus 1. That means that we can divide this polynomial by x minus 1, and I'll use a rectangular area model to actually divide this. I also like to always think that my sum, in this case, is going to have some 0 placeholders. So x cubed plus 0x squared plus a 0x, and then minus 1. So when I divide it by a linear factor, I'll be left with a quadratic. So I have my 3 different columns there. I always place the leading term in this upper box, and then I begin to factor. In this case, I recognize that this would need to be an x squared here, and then I would have a negative 1x squared. I need it to sum to 0, so I need a 1x squared to counter that. That would lead me to have a positive 1x on the top, right? So we've got a 1x, and then here we get a negative 1x in this box, and again needs to sum to 0, so we have to counter it with 1x, making a positive 1 on the top, leading a negative 1 to be here, and now I see that the negative 1 and the negative 1 match. Therefore, we can rewrite x cubed, so therefore, that's what those 3 dots mean again. X cubed minus 1 is the same thing as x minus 1 times that resulting quadratic, which is x squared plus x plus 1. Now this is what you want to do for the rest of the difference of cubes problems, where you're going to use inspection, like looking at the structure of it with your eye to figure out what is the root that would make that 0. From the root, figure out the corresponding linear factor, divide the polynomial so that you figure out the linear factor times the resulting quadratic, and then we'll look for patterns to figure out the rule for the difference of cubes.